So initially, right, like when you're looking at this situation, right, we have a challenging macro environment. When I look at the mission of Google, it is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible. And YouTube is serving that end as far as visual and auditory information goes, organizing videos and making them universally accessible, and also empowering creators to reach a broader audience. Okay, so when you look at a quick SWOT analysis of YouTube, right? You have competitors of YouTube like Vimeo and Dailymotion. YouTube has much more reach compared to those two competitors. You have, I mean, I think initially Vimeo did not really allow you to have, YouTube didn't really allow you to have a members only community where you could have certain videos accessible only to members who are paying members. And that's where Vimeo had an edge, but YouTube changed that with its uh, subscribe option. No, sorry, join option. Subscribe is for subscribing to a channel and join is for actually joining. But really, I think we should be really leveraging the strength of YouTube that, it is a place where it reaches a lot of people. It's very easy to make a video on YouTube, and we should be using that to, you know, reach basically have even more people join YouTube, and so that can potentially lead to higher revenues and profits for YouTube in the long term.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. I am intrigued to hear more.
So when I'm looking at the user segments, right, I can broadly classify user segments into students, pre-kindergarten. I mean, they're not really students, so I mean they're like a very small. Okay, pre-kindergarten, pre-students, students, working professionals, and then retirees, right? I would focus on working professionals because I think they have the maximum disposable income. So building something uh, that's servicing their pain point would be a great idea. I think that's where the highest impact we would get. Uh, Within working professionals, you could look at double income, no kids, or you could look at people who are just single, or people who are parents of young toddlers or expecting parents. I would potentially focus on people who have young toddlers or who are expecting parents because there's not a lot of information out there that is accurate, and there are not a lot of communities out there who are targeted in terms of targeted information that we can get. Does that sound good?
Can you elaborate more on how you decided to focus here? Basically, focusing on
Hmm.
people with young kids. How did you arrive with
Hmm.
this decision?
So I've spoken to a lot of people with young kids or people who are expecting parents, and I just felt like it was very challenging for them to understand. All. I mean, there's a lot of information out there, but a lot of that information is inaccurate. One of the people I conducted a user interview with, both he and his wife work at Microsoft, and he was saying I spent like 5 hours going through YouTube, understanding, like what are the different things I should be buying for a baby. But it's just that I could not get what I wanted because most of those videos are more advertisements, right? Like you could buy the shark app that has this color and this, that, but he's not really answering the question, would that be comfortable to the baby? What would it look like? And just things like you have a video about, how you could get your daughter to sleep through the night as a 1 month old. But there aren't many useful videos based on the user interviews that I've conducted. So that is why I will decide to focus on that segment. Does that sound good?
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, so when I look at researching customer needs, right? I look at, based on my user interviews, basically what my understanding was they would click on a video, right? Like Shark app or Typos or something like that. And those videos would essentially be advertisements, or they would be not giving very relevant information about what is going on in the video. So he wanted some way, he didn't want to waste like 10 minutes trying to understand what the video was. He wanted some sort of automatic summarization, or like something that tells him what the video is going to be about in an accurate manner, automatically summarized before him actually clicking on the video and wasting his time on that video. That was point number one. Number two was he, while he's in the middle of a video, sometimes those ads, YouTube ads that come up, they're very irritating. They'll just come up in the middle of the video. So it seems like, they haven't invested the time in terms of actually their AI is not as good in terms of actually figuring out a critical juncture in the video where you should be putting an ad, like it is for television serials where the ads are placed in a very thoughtful manner. I think those are the two pain points I would go with.
Are you saying that these pain points are the most painful pain points that you would like to prioritize?
Based on my user interviews, yes.
What are some of the other pain points
Mhm.
that you have identified that might be less painful?
Okay. So I'm focusing on just this particular user segment, right? Parents,
Mm-hmm.
young kids, or the third pain point is, right, like obviously, right, if somebody has YouTube on his mobile, right, and the kid has access to the mobile phone, then they have access to videos that are not meant for, people who are less than 18 years old. And, if YouTube in the foreseeable future, that we do have technology, face recognition technology, that can automatically screen out what who is watching that particular. I think that can potentially limit exposure to violent content or inappropriate content to
Okay.
people who are less than 18 years old,
Okay.
particularly young toddlers.
Got it. All right.
Okay. So when we have these three pain points, I would potentially, again, I would look at engineering effort, effectiveness, ease of implementation, and risks when I'm looking at, which pain point to prioritize. Actually, sorry, let me back up a little. So I think when I'm trying to solve a pain point, first I need to figure out which pain point I need to solve. And that should be focused on the impact that I'm going to have by solving that pain point, and the size of the market, the urgency, and the alignment to the mission of YouTube.
Okay.
Once I've figured out the problem, then I can go about how do I solve that problem,
Okay.
the solution space. But let me just focus on the problem space. So, when I'm looking at this problem, right, you have basically the first pain point, which is automatic summarization using AI, which is distinct from the title that was given to the video by the YouTube influencer. I would put impact of having that. I would give it like a 3 out of 5. The size of the market is probably again a 3 out of 5. Urgency is very high, 5 out of 5. Alignment to the mission would be probably like, so you are making videos, you are making that information universally accessible, right? So instead of you trying to spend 10 minutes trying to figure out what that information is, you have that information out in like 10 seconds. So I think
Wait, which problem is this? Sorry.
automatic summarization of the video
Oh,
and
okay.
telling what the video is about before one clicks on it. And that would be distinct from the headline that the creator of the video has put in, so that one does not waste 10 minutes trying to figure out a shark app, the appropriate shark app to get for a particular, without, he does not waste 10 minutes and then finds out that the video was more of an advertisement about what the different colors are, what the different things are, instead of actually focusing on comfort and safety.
Okay.
So alignment to mission would be 5 and 5. That's the automatic summarization. The second pain point that I had was, um, accessibility of young toddlers to YouTube videos that are inappropriate to them. If we can solve that problem, I think the impact I would assign would be 4 on 5. The rationale being that if they get access to bad content, right, like violent content, there are a lot of school shootings going on in America right now. There's a lot of, a lot of inappropriate antisocial elements that are basically by giving them access to this kind of information, a lot of antisocial thoughts come in their mind, inappropriate thoughts. And I think so the impact of something like this could be like 4.5. I'll give it a 4.5.
Okay.
Size of the market would be very high, like 5 on 5. The urgency is also high, 5. And the alignment to the mission of YouTube, making them universally accessible. I mean, it won't be perfectly aligned with that mission, but I think it would be tangentially aligned. So I'd give it a 3 on 5. Does that sound good?
Okay.
Okay. And the third issue that I had was automatic summarization. So I'll just get some. Okay. And what was the third pain point I came up with?
Is that the one where you said the ads don't appear in
Yeah.
on a good pace? Okay.
Yeah. So the ads are not appearing, right? So I think the impact of solving this problem, I would say, is like, I mean, I would give it a 3 out of 5. The size of the market would be probably another 3 out of 5. The urgency is again 3 out of 5. And the alignment to the mission of YouTube, it's not, I mean, you're basically making sure that you're getting the right information at the right juncture. So it's not perfectly aligned, but it's tangentially aligned, but more so much than the second pain point. So I give it a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
So for the first one, I get a total score of 3, 11, 16. The second one, I get a score of 14, 17.5. And the third one, I get a score of 13. So based on this, I would pick the second one, accessibility to information.
Okay.
For young toddlers.
Okay.
That in terms of now, let's focus on how we would solve this problem. When we're thinking about solving this problem, right, we would look at what we could do, right? A solution could be thinking about, what, when you look at the, right, like basically a face recognition software that basically says, if I'm opening YouTube on my mobile app, YouTube ad, and so you need face recognition technology. Those are the two that come. Now, when I'm looking at prioritization, I look at engineering effort, effectiveness, ease of implementation, business risk, and technical risk. So let's look at that. Engineering effort, ease of implementation, effectiveness. So for face recognition, I would give engineering effort 3 out of 5. The reason being that, I mean, while you do have face recognition technology, I mean, getting it accurate, making it accurate, and training it on you and your family would take effort. So I'd give it a 3 out of 5. In terms of ease of implementation, this is actually implementing that, right? So I again gave it a 3 out of 5. Effectiveness, I think this would be really effective. I give it a 5 out of 5. In terms of business risks, I think there could be some amount of technical risk to doing this. So I give it a 3 out of 5. In a sense, there might be false positives. If like the kid looks exactly like the parent, there could be like the AI might get confused a little bit. And business risk, right? Again, if the kid looks exactly like the parent, and I'm not able to watch an 18+ video, then I might get pissed off a little bit. Fingerprint recognition, I think this is here the technology. My understanding is that the technology is more mature. Based on that assumption, I give the engineering effort a 5 out of 5 because there's not much ease of implementation. I give like 4 out of 5. Effectiveness, I give you a 4 out of 5. And business and technical risks that will have two people having that. Okay. So for the first one, I get a total score of 6. The second one, I get a total score of 5. The So based on this, I'll go with the fingerprint recognition, and other product daily active users and additional number of installs. In terms of countermetric, I would look at, I also want to make sure that because of this new technology, it's not like, you're not getting false positives in the sense that I'm unable to watch videos that are only for 18 plus people. So you look at engagement metrics, which would be number of videos viewed per user. The and for this, I'd look at the median, I'd look at the mean, I'd look at the 25th percentile, and I'd look at the 75th percentile, and I'll compare that. I'll do when I do the A/B test. I'll compare before versus after. Any other metrics I should be looking at? I'd also look at, I think in terms of countermetric, I also want to make sure that when this new solution is implemented, your tech infrastructure is not like, because there's going to be more load on the tech infrastructure, right? So they are not data center outages or logging issues or yeah. So I make sure that data center outages. So I track that. That's it.
Got it. Makes sense.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for going through this exercise.
Thank you.
Let's take a deep breath. How do you feel right now? That was a lot of talking.
Yeah. So I was a little rusty in the sense, like, I think one was when you said that, is there a third pain point? And that third pain point ended up being the best pain point that we should kind of target. I think I kind of was mentally, I just spoken to somebody. I did this mock interview on Exponent, and the Microsoft team basically gave me a solution. So I kind of modified that, and I was anchored to that.
Got it.
The other thing was I've been back to back meetings, so I was a little rusty.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. Let's take a deep breath. Thank you for going through this exercise with 22 people watching. So this alone adds to the anxiety. So I just want to recognize you for helping our community with this mock interview.
No worries.
All right. So I have some ideas on how we can make this a little bit better.
Mhm.
And keep in mind, my advice is for more senior PMs.
Mhm.
So just from that perspective, what I would do is I would spend a lot more time upfront before we make a decision. So for example,
Mhm.
the prompt is how might you improve YouTube? We talked about the mission, that's good. We talked about competitor, that's good. We talked about the strength, which is a huge reach. And it's easy to make videos. We want to reach more people.
Right.
At this stage, I need a little bit more time going from strength to user segment. So knowing the strength, what is the goal that we're setting? Is it to reach more people? Is it to make it videos easier to make? What is it?
Oh, I see your point, because I didn't kind of clarify that, what are we trying to achieve?
Right.
The
So
improvement,
the goal setting, I feel like it's implied, but it should be a little bit more explicit.
Got it. And can the goal be like, I'm trying to increase revenues for YouTube, given the macro environment? I think this is not the time for innovation, like Moonshot Project. This is the time for focusing on revenues and.
Sure, you can, but then you would need to talk more about what is happening at the macro layer. What do you mean by what's given the macroeconomics?
Right. So like there's sometimes like a lot of product management is about making incremental updates to make the customer experience better, and product managers mostly focus on the customer experience. But that and a lot of those things don't necessarily, they're like good to have, but they don't necessarily directly tie into the business bottom line, right? Like stuff like these moonshot projects, or even like
Sure.
small improvements that like designers suggest that this will make the user's life a little better. But in
Right.
this case, I mean, there are two ways I could do the goal setting. One is get more users onto YouTube. The other is improve the revenues of YouTube. There are two different goals. I mean, they are aligned, but they are two different goals.
Right.
So given the macro environment, given that there's pressure on bottom line, given that shareholders are getting impatient with interest rates being higher, should we be focusing on increasing revenues for YouTube as the metric, as the goal, or should we be focusing on just getting more users onto YouTube?
Okay, got it. So if that's your angle, then you also need to talk about what Google is facing in this macro environment.
Okay.
Are we saying that Google stocks are down?
Well, they're not. They're not. Google has been performing well. Google has been resilient.
Right. So then that argument doesn't make sense, right?
Got it. Got it. So then maybe should I not talk about the macro environment at all?
No, you can. It just has to make logical sense. And then when you say, okay, based on the macro environment, you have to specify what do you mean by macro environment? Okay, people care about the bottom line. Does that mean the stocks are down? People care about interest rate, but how does that affect YouTube? YouTube has a free tier and it has a paid tier. So interest rates are down. That means when interest rates are up, that means people want to hold on to their cash. They don't want to spend money. But then YouTube is free, so it doesn't affect people's desire to use YouTube.
Got it.
So what is that argument that you're making?
So I think what the argument that right. So I think looking back, if I were to do it all over again, I think the argument that I should have been making is that while Google and YouTube right now are doing pretty well, they have been resilient in the face of the macro environment.
Okay.
They have to continue to do so in the next 6 months to a 1 year while interest rates stay elevated. In order to do that, they have to be more thoughtful in terms of increasing their revenues.
Okay.
Because or getting more people to be paid subscribers to YouTube. Got it. The rationale being that a lot of paid subscribers might drop off. Right. So making the argument or making the case for being a paid subscriber to YouTube has to be made more compelling. That's great. That is a much better and more compelling argument that you're making in terms of strategy. Got it. How do you feel about that setup? Yeah, I think this. Yeah, I think this makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. Okay, great. Now, if that is your angle, getting more people to pay for YouTube, then what would be your next step? We don't have to go into the mock interview again, but just take us through your thought process. If that's an angle, what would you do next? Correct. So I think, okay, so actually now backing back, we could look at it through two angles. Case for people to become paid subscribers to YouTube or the advertisers, because the advertisers, they don't get paid, they get paid, you get paid more on YouTube gets paid more if the advertiser actually clicks on the ad compared to the advertiser just, giving the ad as an impression, right? Wait. Advertisers don't click on ads. No. Users click on ads. But as YouTube, you get paid more. YouTube gets paid more if the user actually clicks on the ad versus if the advertiser just gives the ad as an impression, right? Yeah. So I think there are two things. So it has to be a more compelling case for a person to become a paid subscriber. That's number one. Or the advertisers, the ads that are serviced on YouTube, there has to be a higher click-through rate you need to get a higher click-through rate for those ads. Right. We need to choose one of them. So if you were to choose the latter, right, then I would change my answer and I would basically be on the ads thing, right? Improving the artificial intelligence so that ads are serviced at more logical places in the juncture so that people actually click on those ads instead of just, waiting for that ad, waiting for those 5 seconds to pass and clicking skip ad. Okay, got it. Yeah. So basically, this is where the setup can really drive the rest of your interview, is the point that I'm making. Got it. The first half of the interview sets you up for success or the other way around. Correct. The second half is just you executing against the strategy that you set up front. Got it. Okay, cool. So then maybe let me just talk about assuming that your setup is good and then you're going down this strategy of
picking a user segment and then focusing on parents. So there's several different segments on the table. There's students, pre-K, there's working professionals, people who don't have kids, and then parents, and then retirees. And then you said to pick parents. And then this is where I said, wait, but how did you get here?
Mm-hmm.
It's too fast. The decision-making conversation is too fast for me. I need more time spent on talking about how you made this decision.
Mm-hmm.
So your decision, your justification for picking parents is you did user interviews and they have a lot of pain points. But then how does that pain point compare with pain points felt by other segments? So I could say, as a small business owner who just started a new business, I'm also surfing YouTube all the time. There's so much I don't know. How do you justify that parents have bigger needs compared to other segments? So that's one area that you would need to spend more time on.
So if I prioritize based on, I think, spending, like spending capacity, like ability to spend, I think I would come up with a framework there, and I'd say ability to spend and willingness to spend, right? So those two. So you need to have the ability to spend, and you need to have the willingness to spend, right? So if I have $10 million, but I don't really care about the paid videos on YouTube, I don't care.
Well, it depends, right? Because if your goal is to improve click-through rate for the ads by making the ads quality higher, you're targeting the free tier users. So spending power is not an important thing. But then if your goal is to get more people to upgrade into paid users, then yes.
Got it.
Right. So this is where your decision-making criteria needs to ladder up to whatever strategy you set up front.
Got it. Makes sense.
Yeah. But
and
then
we have to have only one goal, right? Out of the two goals that I mentioned, we can have only one goal.
No, there is no black and white rule that says you could only have one. Because basically your goal here is you want to help YouTube monetize.
Right. Got it.
Yeah, and there's different ways of monetizing more.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, that's a better way. And then when I'm doing the prioritization, I could say that this will help me prioritize less effectively than this. Got it.
Right. Yeah. So in this, basically every time when you make a decision, there needs to be a reason that is more than, well, I know parents have a lot of pain. Yes, but so do a lot of other people. But then at the root of it, if you look at the solution, if you look at the pain points that you identified, they're actually not parent specific. So they're looking at the video, it feels like an ad, it doesn't give them the quality answer that they're looking for, or they're irritated by the ads that come on randomly. This is not a parent specific problem. These pain points affect all free users. So the point I'm making here, it's not adding up that you're picking parents, but then the pain points are not parent specific.
Oh, right.
Your pain points are general.
I see your point.
Your pain points are targeting people who just use the free version of YouTube to find answers.
Got it. So when I pick parents as the customer segment, though, the pain points have to be very parent specific.
Yes, I mean that's the point that you're trying to make, right? That's the PM user empathy quality that you're trying to prove that you have.
Correct.
So in this moment in time, you have not proved that you have user empathy.
Okay. Got it. But just like maybe if I wanted to pick ads, right? Because ads is something that the irritating ads, that is something that is applicable to all kinds of users.
All
right?
users. Yes.
Right. So I mean, I'm just saying that maybe that is the right pain point we should be solving anyways, because then maybe we should not be, I guess that's where because the framework says pick a user segment and then pick their pain points. But
So
then we pick.
remember what I said last time when we met? There isn't really a framework that is the best, or there isn't a framework that is always relevant. And
Right.
you can segment, and
Mhm.
sometimes you should segment,
Mhm.
but it has to make sense. So you can't blindly
Mhm.
apply frameworks as illustrated here. And if you want to segment, then
Mhm.
the argument that you're making here is this segment will
Mhm.
help me achieve the goal the best.
Oh, I see your point. I see your point.
But then I feel like the story that you're trying to tell here is people who are going into a new phase of life, who are wanting to learn a new
Mm.
skill. They
Yeah.
use YouTube for learning,
Right.
and then they have these pain points.
Right.
And when they're trying to learn, it's because there's an urgent need. It's not oh, let me just learn about rocket science.
Got it.
Right. So there's an urgency associated with this particular segment, and they want to get better because their quality of life is suffering.
Got
Right.
it. Yeah. That's
That's the
how I should have said it.
story.
That's how I
That's the
should.
story you're trying to tell.
Right. 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 And that's how I should have segmented people who use YouTube for, just recreational stuff like I
Right.
do, virtual, versus people who do it for a very targeted learning because they're going into a new phase of life. And that's it.
Correct.
Yes.
And when you segment that way,
Mhm.
you appear a lot more thoughtful. You're able to think deeply about how people behave,
Correct.
basically human psychology. When I'm learning rocket science, I
Mhm.
don't really need to learn it. There's no urgency. It's entertainment, or maybe I'm just naturally curious, but it's not really affecting my day to day.
Mhm.
That segment of people are probably not, like, there's no urgency to getting upgrades or paying for something, versus the other group, maybe I'm studying for interview,
I
right?
see.
There's urgency, or I
Mhm.
really want to pivot into a new career. There's urgency, there's motivation, there's drive. They're more likely to spend money on the problem because it's urgent for them and they desperately need to solve these unknowns.
Got it.
That is the story that you're trying to tell here. And that's why the ads are annoying. But versus, oh, YouTube is just
Mm.
playing while I'm cooking, then
Uh,
the ads aren't annoying because
right.
it's not really affecting my quality of life. But when I'm desperate and getting answers, oh my gosh, ads are so annoying.
Yep.
Right? So that's human behavior, human psychology. That's what we mean by user empathy. It's a lot more thoughtful than
Mhm.
going through the frameworks blindly and trying to be mechanical about it.
Got it. Makes sense.
So, this is what I would expect to see in a senior level
Makes
product
sense.
science interview.
Got it. Okay. Any other advice you have in terms of, the metrics I came up with? Or,
Well,
uh,
I have a lot to say about the scoring
okay.
activity that a lot of candidates are taught to do.
Okay.
The spirit behind why we might want to score
Mm-hmm.
is a forcing function
Mm-hmm.
that forces us to not make decisions in a random way.
Right.
We want to be logical and scientific.
Right.
But the scoring thing is not, but most of the candidates score at the tail end of the interview. Is not the only place where you need to be making sound decisions, right? You need to be scoring things. You need to be thinking deeply throughout the entire product science interview for the whole 30 minutes. That is how you should be making decisions along the way, but not necessarily in
Mhm.
this framework that has 5 different dimensions to it. I
Mm-hmm.
actually would not. If I need to score things, I wouldn't use 5 dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
I would pick one or two. Otherwise, it would take too long at the end.
Oh, I see.
Where the second half is actually not that important.
Oh, okay. I see your point. So what you said was when I engineering effort, ease of implementing, I looked at five
It's
things.
all very relevant.
Mm-hmm.
So engineering effort and ease of implementation, actually,
Mm-hmm.
they're in opposite directions. If it's very easy, you're scoring high, that means it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then engineering effort, if you're scoring high, that's a bad thing. So here, your dimension needs to be in the same direction because you're adding it up.
Mm. Yeah, so that's how we did it. So I should have clarified that. So engineering effort, by that what
Right.
I mean is that the if it's high, then that means there's low engineering effort.
Okay. Yeah. So in order to make your communication very clear and crisp,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to add caveats
Oh, I see your point.
where you could avoid it.
Got it.
So here again, you don't need engineering effort and you don't need ease of implementation. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the same thing.
Okay.
Just
So
pick
what?
one.
Okay, got it. So if I just put in ease of implementation, effectiveness, business risks, and technical, and you don't really need technical risk either.
Just risk. Like if you want to call out a risk, then just call it risk.
Correct, correct. And there could be cases where I do remember doing a case study where it made sense to kind of because the risk was different across the
Right. So only if it makes sense, right?
Uh, got
But
it.
then, okay, and the same thing applies with prioritizing the problem space. Here's the impact, size of market, urgency.
Alignment to mission. Yeah.
If you had segmented in a thoughtful way,
Mhm.
I would argue you don't even need to prioritize using this 5 dimensional thing.
Correct. Because it would have been just very logical to do that,
Exactly.
to go with people who want to.
Right. So that is a difference between a mechanical way of approaching product sense versus a more thoughtful, human, strategic way.
Got it. 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 And even for the last part, in there could be cases where I don't need to give formal scores to ease of implementation, effectiveness, and business risks, right? Because I see on Exponent, I took the other course that I was talking about, and there it's like very mechanically they tell you do this.
And
But when
that's fine if you're more junior or if you're just switching into product. It's a
got
forcing function that trains your muscles.
mm,
That's fine.
got
But
it.
if you're more senior, you're in product management for years,
Mm,
there's another way.
got it. Makes sense. Got it. And the metrics that I came up with, do you think like that's more of I shouldn't really spend my time in that, like in terms of adoption, countermetric, data center outages, right? Like those things that I came up with to judge the success of what I.
So here is where
Mhm.
you should mention what the goal is again.
Mm.
Here in this story,
Mm.
it feels like the goal is actually it's not clear what the goal is. You're saying you're focusing on parents and then you want
Mm.
them to watch more videos. Then the success metric is are they watching more videos? But then there's also another pain point that you said with the kids using their parents' phone and then watching inappropriate content.
Correct.
That is very niche. So when you do the market sizing, it just doesn't feel like a very broad problem because the kid would have to unlock the parent's phone
Well, I
in
mean,
order to watch YouTube.
kids these days are pretty smart. I've seen.
Yeah, but it's very niche, right? It's again, what is the problem that you're trying to solve here? Are you trying to get parents to watch more videos?
Oh, I see your point. The alignment.
Right?
That's where the issue was. I see.
Right. So throughout the product sense interview, everything needs to
Mm-hmm.
make sense. Don't go off track. Don't solve random problems.
I see your point.
If your goal is to get parents to watch more videos, then your success metric is streaming hours.
Right.
Not adoption, not installs, streaming hours.
I see your point.
It has to be very directly
Correct.
relevant. And basically the point I'm making here is we have to be crisp in our communication. What is the goal? What is the problem? What's the solution? What's the success criteria? In this case, it's streaming hours. But then if it's the second version of this, where we're focusing on either upgrading to the paid tier or ads revenue, then it's revenue. Right? It has to be very direct.
So when you look at metrics, it has to be like, when I say, so it has to be revenue. So in this case, like the goal setting that we did, either we get more people as paid subscribers or we get people to click more ads. Finally, the solution that I would have come up with, the metric should have been revenue, and the counter metric should have been, are we just having people watch fewer videos because we are just optimizing for revenue? In which case, the revenue that we have may not be sustainable because people eventually drop off, and they might tell their friends that, dude, YouTube did this weird change, and I'm not very happy with YouTube anymore.
Right. So again, the goal here is if it's upgrades, it's one thing. If it's ad click-through rate, it's another thing. But then it all ladders up to revenue. If it's about upgrades, then the counter is how are we affecting the free experience, the free tier experience? That's the counter. If it's ads, then the counter is the user experience. Again, we're talking about the free tier now. Ads are only relevant in the free tier. So if the goal is to improve ads revenue, then the counter is the user experience for the free users, which is streaming hours.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Depending on the solution that I came up.
Correct.
But generally, for ads, what I had suggested is putting the ad at a critical juncture, not at like some random place where it gets irritating. Putting the ad in a critical juncture in the YouTube app. So in that case, it would actually improve the user experience for the free users as opposed to decrease it, right? Because they want to click on those ads, not that they're being forced.
Well, it depends. Do they actually want to click on the ads or do they want to watch the video? If you're focusing on the people who are dying to get answers because their quality of life is low, they just want to get answers. They don't want to click on the video, click on the ads, unless the ad solves their pain points. So let's say in the parents' use case, their baby's all crying all the time. They can't get any sleep. And here's an ad that says, buy this product, your baby will sleep. They will click on it. But they might not even finish watching the video because they got the solution from the ad.
Correct. Oh, so you have to be, I see what you're saying. Yeah. This is much more thoughtful than what I did. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So these are just some of the ways that you could improve thoughtfulness, the degree of thoughtfulness in a product sense interview at more senior levels.
Makes sense. And should I talk about data center outages at all? Because when you're adding more complexity to YouTube, there'll probably be more data center outages. Should I even mention that as a counter metric or no?
Well, it depends on what maybe it's a clarifying thing, but it's not the main focus of this interview.
Okay.
Data center outage is also very niche. Basically, what you care about is uptime. And kind of just
exactly.
Product health.
Okay.
Right. So again, what you're saying is people need the ability to watch YouTube whenever they want. It needs to be up. And that just seems like it's like table stakes.
Correct. No, but as soon as we start adding complexity to YouTube, we also want to make sure that system uptime is unaffected. It is table stakes, but
sure. But that's a operating metric. It's not a goal.
Okay.
It's not a success metric. Okay, so maybe we can talk about the difference between a goal and a metric. A goal is something that you're trying to achieve. A metric is something you measure. How do you know that you have achieved the goal? You measure it. But it doesn't mean every single metric is a goal. You can measure anything. Some are for operational purposes. Only one or two of them are goals.
Got it. Got it. So I think from what I hear from you is, in the end, when I do the metrics thing, I should just focus on the metric, which is the revenue increase, and the counter metric based on whatever, and then just focus on and not really bring in these operational metrics like system uptime was 99.99% or something like that. Right? It did not.
You are focusing on measuring success. You're not focusing on identifying every single metric that you could use to measure this product.
I see your point. That's the SRE's job. That's not my job. Got it.
Again, it depends on the question. If they really want to know how you would measure your product in a very comprehensive way, sure, you could come up with 1,000 metrics.
Got it.
But then the point here in a product sense interview is, how do you measure success? How do you know that you have hit your goals? It's not about measuring uptime. Like if you don't add in any features, your system still needs to be up.
Got it.
It's irrelevant.
Makes sense.
I'm happy to take more questions if the 25 participants here have questions or anything else. Okay. I was wondering how someone could answer a question like, should YouTube develop an e-commerce marketplace? I have seen a lot of videos on building solution, follow the framework, but not sure how to tackle this one. How would you answer it? So this is not a product sense question. This is a product strategy question. In a product strategy question, should a company do X? Then you first you need to talk about the company. This is where you could do a SWOT analysis on what the company is good at, what it's weak in, who the competitors are, and anything that's happening on a macro level, like in the market today. Would it make sense for this company to pursue a new solution, solving a new problem? So the formula that I use for strategy questions is I do a SWOT on the company, and then I say I'm going to lean into the strength, minimize the weaknesses, such that I can win in the market. And by choosing e-commerce marketplace, it also means I am saying no to all the other opportunities that I could tackle as YouTube. So in what case would e-commerce marketplace make more sense than other opportunities? So that's how I would tackle it.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi, good to see you.
I'm also a big fan of YouTube. I would like to ask the follow-up with segmentation, which I think you hit the nail, that the pain points should be specifically associated with the segmentation. And I also feel I have the similar type of pain points myself, that is the pain points getting applied to almost all the segments have identified, not necessarily the biggest one. Right. So I would want to ask this twofold question. One is, it's harder to think through the end-to-end of all your solutioning when you take maybe 2 minutes break as you're thinking through your whole solutioning. So essentially with a framework of segmentation in the middle, it's helpful. But like I felt if you were to segment based on life stage or the demographic of users, very easily have intertwined type of pain points among users.
Right.
Well, like behavior can be like slightly better, but like it's just harder. Like I wonder if there's any trick over there that can help us if we want to segment. And secondarily, if we sort of skip segmentation, I also afraid that you were going to be dinged on the checklist of, hey, you didn't really segment user. Does that really helpful for your final interview takeaway?
Yeah. So I'll talk about the first question first. Ways to segment. I don't advise segmenting based on life stage or demographics. I recommend that we segment based on behavior. So in this example, right, we segmented, in the debrief, we segmented based on there's basically the person going into a new life stage or doing something new, and they have to learn a new skill ASAP. That's a behavior.
Yeah.
It's not demographics, or I mean, in this case, it's life stage, but we're more focusing on the behavior. So let's say parents who had their second kid, they've done it before. They're probably not as desperate in getting answers versus people doing it for the first time, people having their first kid. So that's what I would say about segmentation. Would you get dinged on not segmenting? It depends on how calibrated your interviewer is. Not every single interviewer is well calibrated. If they're not trained, or if they don't think deeply about a product sense or strategy question, they're just going through the motions, you might get dinged.
Yeah.
But that's a reflection on their capability as an interviewer. That's less than your capability as an interviewee. And that, I would just say, that's bad luck.
Okay. All right. So is it fair to say the general advice is still to segment, but maybe perhaps trying to base on behavior? Especially how does that tie into the problems you identify as their pain points?
I would say, why do we need to segment? It's because the space is too big.
Too big. Yeah.
That's the purpose of segmentation.
Yeah.
But if the space is contained, then maybe you don't need to segment.
I see. All right. Thank you, Nancy.
Sure. Okay. I'll see you in the next roundtable. This was fun.
Yeah.
See you next time. Okay.
See you.
Bye.